Breaking news out of college football. After 17 seasons at Alabama, Nick Saban is retiring. This news, first reported by Chris Lowe of ESPN, 24/7 Sports, has since confirmed it. Let's take a look at Nick Saban's career by the numbers, and they are special. He collected 7 national championships, 6 while with the Tide, 1 at LSU, 11 conference titles, 2 of those came at LSU, and 9 at Alabama, and 9 playoff wins. To talk more about this major news out of college football, we bring in John Talty of Bama 24/7. And John, just first off, how surprising is this news?
Yeah, I think it is surprising. I think there's been buzz for months now about him considering this. I would say informed speculation that this was a possibility. But talking to people around the situation today, I've heard from multiple people both on staff, people close to Nick, and other people that were surprised by this news. Some even said shocked. So it's one of those things, I think, in part, Emily, because of his commitment to football, how much he loves it, how open he's talked about, really kind of not knowing what he would do if he wasn't part of a team, that even though there's been a good amount of buzz about it, it still is just shocking to see him finally decide to walk away today.
Now, John, you literally wrote the book on Nick Saban. You can check it out, The Leadership Secrets of Nick Saban, wherever you get your books. But put into perspective for us, just what does today mean for the legacy of Nick Saban?
Yeah, so that book came out in August 2022, and I said he was the greatest of all time. And I think that's as true today as it was then. I think from 5 years from now, it'll still be true. I think the run that he has had in college football is unprecedented. I don't think it'll ever be done again, in part just because of the way the game has changed, the 12-team playoff coming down the line, NIL, transfer portal. It's going to be harder and harder, I think, for these real super dynasties, I think, to come together. And his run is just unbelievable. The way that he has been able to adapt to all of the coaches who have come out of his tree, including Kirby Smart, who has had an incredible run at Georgia. This is a man who has had a huge impact on the game of college football. And so for him to, walk away today leaves a big hole, I think, in college football. Leaves a big hole for Alabama. They have had one guy for this incredible stretch, and it's going to be hard to find anyone who, of course, can match even in the neighborhood of what he's been able to do in Tuscaloosa.
And the fact that you were able to write the book on Nick Saban means that you got just some unprecedented access into who this man truly is. Is there something maybe that surprised you that you learned about Nick Saban while writing this book?
I don't know if it's anything that surprised me, but I think one of the most important things with Nick Saban is just the true commitment to what it takes every single day to be great. And I was talking to someone actually a couple days ago about, Georgia and other schools kind of taking the Alabama Nick Saban playbook. And I said, it's, having the playbook is one thing, but actually being able to live your life that way every single day is another. And I've talked to plenty of people around him that coach for him, work for him, and they said truly he takes it just as seriously on April 5th as he does on October 5th. This was a guy who was consistently delivering the same level of effort every single day. And I know that can be hard to believe, but I've talked to people who said, this guy truly has me convinced that if I don't work this hard every single day, we're going to lose to UT Chattanooga. Like, he was able to have that impact on that building every single day. And every person in that building fed off of that. When you have your leader driving the bus in that manner, everyone in that building felt like, I have to try to match that. And it's a very rare thing. A lot of people talk about trying to do that, trying to create a culture like that, but to actually do it every single day is incredibly difficult. And it's why he's been so successful.
Yeah, with an insane work ethic like that, it'll be interesting to see what is next for Nick Saban. What's next for Alabama is something that young Tide fans know nothing about, and that is a coaching search. So, John, who are some names that you've already heard flown out in terms of what's next for this candidate?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a couple obvious names that are already getting some buzz out there. Dan Lanning at Oregon is the number one. Now, he does have a $20 million buyout, which that's a big number, but he has ties back to Alabama, was a GA on a just stacked 2015 Alabama coaching staff. Of course, then went to Georgia with Kirby Smart. And so he has that background. He knows what it takes to win at the highest level. He's an obvious one. Mike Norvell, Florida State, is another big name. And then I think the one that you're going to hear, I think, at least maybe from his side of things, I think Lane Kiffin is one that, from everything that I've heard over the years, talking to people around him who are pretty plugged in, have said that he has had his eye on this Alabama job. I think it's a job that he would love to have, from just what I've been told over the years. Now, whether Lane Kiffin can seriously get in the mix for this job, I think that is to be determined, but certainly has had a lot of success at Ole Miss, has done really well navigating this current NIL and transfer portal kind of world, and so he is a name to get mentioned. But those are the three. But I'll add this one caveat: Alabama AD Greg Byrne is known as the ninja. That's somewhat self-anointed, but he loves to do things very quietly. I think he likes to surprise some people with his hires. When he hired Nate Oates as the basketball coach, that was not on anyone's radar. So there's some obvious names right now, and there's good reason for it. But just know that Greg Byrne likes to do things behind the scenes very quietly, and it wouldn't shock me if one of those three names is somebody other than them, even though those are the names getting the most buzz in the industry right now.
Another big piece of this is the transfer portal. Although the winter window has closed, it now reopens for Alabama players for 30 days because they are undergoing a coaching change. So outside of getting the hire right for Alabama, roster-wise, what are your biggest concerns as far as roster retention for the best roster in the country as it pertains to the talent composite?
It's a really precarious time for Alabama because, as you mentioned, the portal is closed for everybody else. So if you do lose people, there's not necessarily an opportunity to backfill them. I can guarantee you there are personnel programs all around the country right now that are probably going up and down the Alabama roster, seeing guys who could be potential fits. I'm sure there's already been outreach to high school coaches, 7-on-7 coaches of some of Alabama's current players. It's going to be a frenzy, and it's going to be very hard and challenging for Alabama to make sure they hold on to their key players. I think it's going to be really dependent on the current staff and then getting a guy in place sooner than later to try to hold together what is a really talented roster. Again, they came very close to playing in the national championship, very close to beating Michigan in the Rose Bowl. There is a lot of returning talent. There's also a lot of talent coming in that just enrolled the other day, that just started their first semester at Alabama, truly. And so I'm very curious to see whether any of those guys decide to go elsewhere. Because here's one of the important things, Emily. Alabama has had so much coaching turnover over the years that they always sold Nick Saban and Alabama. It wasn't about the assistant coaches. So now a big piece of your recruiting pitch to all these guys is gone. And whether Alabama will be the same Alabama moving forward is an open question. So a lot of those guys came for Nick Saban and not necessarily position coaches. And that's something that's going to be used against them and certainly used to try to entice them to hit the portal and go elsewhere.
Yeah, Alabama bringing in another very impressive class, the number 2 class in the nation in 2024. John, it is a challenging time, but we know that you will be all over it at Bama 24/7. So make sure to check out his work online at Bama247.com.